This is crazy, but we have reports suggesting another wild Texans move on the offensive line. And honestly, I'm not too sure how I feel because the Texans O-line is probably set for the season. They are set on the NFL draft. It is April. But I do like the idea of going out and getting this player. He is the same age as Laken Tomlinson, so it's interesting to see a big name who's still left on free agency, by the way. Why did they go with Laken Tomlinson instead of this player? So couple interesting things to dive into today, but first thing, if you're new to Texans Digest, 91% of you watching right now are not subscribed. Appreciate all the love and support on the Texans Digest. It has been awesome. We're really close to 1,000 subs. The community has been so awesome to just see the comments pouring in. Let me know your thoughts on the Texans this season. We've had a lot of back and forth about the draft, but I figured why not talk about the offensive line, and that is Brandon Scherff, who they think should go out and get him. I mean, I definitely don't disagree. Scherff is definitely a great option. And when you look at what he can offer to the table, it's interesting why they went with Scherff, or why they went with Tomlinson over Scherff. So we'll break it down in terms of why did they do that. He's a former All-Pro guard. Just finished up his 3 years with Jacksonville. And the grades are pretty similar for Tomlinson and Scherff. So it's mainly, to me, it looks like it's the money, right? Brandon Scherff, 64 overall grade, a very good pass blocker. The run blocking just a little lower. And I know PFS grades aren't normally the most accurate, but the biggest thing I'm looking at is right there. The number 0 sacks allowed. That is very, very, very good. And when you look at Laken Tomlinson, he's allowed, 6 sacks, 5 penalties, over 1,000 snaps. You had Scherff play little less snaps, but I mean, overall, they're pretty similar players. They're both 33 years old. I didn't mind going and getting Scherff, but honestly, the biggest reason to why the Texans went with Tomlinson instead of Scherff was the money, right? Tomlinson was such a cheap option, and when you look at this contract right here, 3 years, $50 million for his past contract with the Jaguars, 16 on average for the season, 30 guaranteed at signing. So there could be a couple questions as to what does he want? Is he still weighing options? He was supposed to sign with an AFC contender this offseason in terms of rumors back in March, and nobody signed him. So is Scherff falling off? Do they not want to sign him? He's a good veteran to put on the line. He's probably a decent leader for the Jaguars, at least I saw. So it's a little bit questioning. The only thing that makes sense to me is the money. The Texans probably didn't want to give him a multi-year deal with $15 million as a base salary, and they probably also didn't have that money to where they also wanted to extend Derek Stingley. They did. They gave Danielle Hunter an extra year. I think now it doesn't matter if you go out and get Scherff for a 1-year deal, but that is if he is willing to sign a contract for 1 year. Because he is 33 years old, he's probably looking for a little bit security, 2 years, 3-year contract, and I don't know if he's going to get that, but it is still questioning to me to why is he still on the block, because Brandon Scherff is a good player. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you look at Laken Tomlinson, Brandon Scherff, I would rather have the All-Pro. Laken Tomlinson, very good back with his time on the Niners, but I mean, the offensive line, it is kind of set right now. You have the left tackle, Cam Robinson. Left guard, it is Tomlinson. The center, that'll be Juice Scruggs. You have Jarrett Patterson. And then right guard, Titus Howard, along with the right tackle and Trent Brown. The only reason you bring in Scherff is to back up Tomlinson because you already have that void filled, unless you're just hoping for, for depth pieces in case somebody were to go down. And I love the Kenyon Green trade because even if he was depth, he was not good depth. And that's why you traded for Ed Ingram to back up Laken Tomlinson. So Brandon Scherff, definitely not a bad option. I know this is the Bengals, but I feel like you look at what is still out there in Brandon Scherff. 33 years old, 6'5", and then last year's stats, 0 sacks, 1 QB hit allowed, and only 2 penalties. There's a lot of teams that need a guard right now. So to see a big name like this still out there, I know the Texans most likely won't go after him, but you had Terron Armstead just retired earlier, so the Dolphins definitely need somebody. I know it's a tackle, and I know it's not the Texans, but just trying to put it out there as to why is a big name still on the market, and the Texans could get a steal if he's still looking to sign a smaller contract type of deal. But, I mean, I'm still a little confused as to why this article thinks that it would be a good idea to go after Brandon Scherff. And the only reason I say that is because the Texans' offensive line is set. there's no real reason to go out and get Brandon Scherff, especially if you would have to pay him $10-15 million a season, because that's kind of what he's capable of in terms of this market. You had Tomlinson last year on the Seahawks. He had a solid season, but it just goes to show you that the Texans would rather take the cheap, solid, prototypical, gonna perform type of player. And Tomlinson has had his struggles last season with a couple penalties and a couple sacks allowed, but they'd rather take a solid, middle of the pack, decent guard rather than go out and get a dominant pass blocker and have to pay him $15 million. So that just goes to show you where Nick Caserio's head at. They're probably going to draft a guard, if not first round, maybe trade back. They might go second round. That is why there's been so much NFL content in terms of draft content for the Texans on these past videos. But overall, looking at what the Texans are going to do, I feel like guard is a need at this point. Tomlinson, there needs to be some competition there other than Ed Ingram, who Vikings fans did not like at all. But I mean, looking at what do the Texans do, the offensive line is a glaring hole, but wide receiver is also a glaring hole. So you have veterans on the O-line, so I don't think there's any major holes, but definitely want to set up for the future. Cam Robinson is not your future blindside tackle. Trent Brown is not your future right tackle. Although he was good, he's had some past injuries. You have Laken Tomlinson as your dominant, solid, gonna produce, be a good left tackle, be a one-year bridge kind of guy, and then Titus Howard can play the right guard position. But Nick Caserio knows what he's doing. I'm going to give Caserio the benefit of the doubt in terms of this was a good idea to not go after the more expensive player, even though I like Scherff as a better player than Laken Tomlinson. Now you look to the draft, you look to kind of amplify your offense, right? The biggest question for the Texans last year was, why did they have a sophomore slump? Why were their offense lacking? The offensive line didn't help. Bobby Slowick was another problem. Stroud looked uncomfortable. He didn't know who to throw to. John Mechie was his number 2 wide receiver when Tank Dell went down, and even Dell earlier in that season, he took a little while to get settled into his position, dropping passes, and then Diggs went down as well, so that was not a good sign either. But overall, the offense is what took the big dip in last year's production. They were around 18th. That's middle of the pack in terms of NFL offenses, when I know the CJ Stroud in his rookie year, he looked a lot better, and the stats are pretty similar. But my point here is this offense needs to be very sufficient, right? You look at what do you need to replenish. It is O-line, it is wide receiver, it is running back, it is tight end. So honestly, 4 of those picks out of the 5-7 picks that the Texans have, those need to be the positions, and it's all on offense. Maybe you get a defensive tackle, but I'm not expecting a lot of defense in this draft. Maybe 1, maybe 2 defenders at the max, and that would be either defensive line depth in the 3rd or 4th round, or maybe you get another secondary linebacker. They just signed EJ Speed for that reason, probably because they can't address defense in the draft, so why not sign somebody for depth? But there's just so much going on. There's so much the Texans can do, and seeing an article like this where, yeah, it might make sense for the Texans to consider Brandon Scherff. Yeah, I'm confused why he's on the market as well, but it's most likely because of Asante Samuel, who's looking for that max contract, and when you have players that know their caliber of player that they are, they're going to sit, they're going to hang out for a couple months, and they're going to try and get what they're worth, unless they're just not being offered a contract. But there's a lot of speculatory things that could be happening for the Texans, and I don't think this is one of them. It definitely wouldn't be a terrible idea in terms of getting a guard instead of Tomlinson, but again, I like what the Texans have done. I'm not going to say I wish they got Scherff instead of Tomlinson. I was hoping for that at the time, but it really does make sense because looking at his contract and what he was worth on the Jaguars, 15, 16 a year, he's probably looking for more than that just because of his stats last season. There's a lot of other teams that need a guard pretty badly that are probably going to pay him a little bit more if he does see the field, but there you have it. Texans, look into the draft. What do they got? you got to take a weapon first. There's a lot of questions as to Caserio's plan, but one of those first 2 picks should definitely be a guard. You can get a tackle in the 3rd round, but then when do you get a running back? Is this the year that you draft a running back because you're not rebuilding anymore? You're trying to get some weapons. Do you go running back first 2? I don't know. There's so many different things that I can go on a tangent of what if. I hate playing the what if game, but it is kind of fun to kind of hypothetically think about the Texans' future and what could go right for this team, because it is a very talented team. There's a couple positions that they need in terms of if they have a running back duo in Mixon and Hampton, or Mixon and Harvey, or Mixon and Giddens, or a Mixon and Sampson. Any one of those combos I'm fine with in the draft, and establishing a run game of a 1-2 punch like a David Montgomery and a Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that's what the offense is going to be with Nick Caley. They're probably going to pepper the run. And in order to do that, you need to establish an offensive line as well. You can't just have a good run game and nobody to block for up front. And we do have blockers. I just want to worry about the future in terms of the 1-year contracts that Trent Brown, Laken Tomlinson, and Cam Robinson signed. So a little bit of a tangent for myself. Definitely a little more than I should have gone. But the rumors are Brandon Scherff. The Texans should go after him. They're probably not. But we're looking towards the draft. Let me know any mock drafts you want to see in the comments. But let me know your thoughts on Brandon Scherff. And appreciate all the support on the videos. And thanks for watching.